Respected elders, brothers and sisters, beloved youth, Alhamdulillah, we were covering the story of the life of Sulaymān alayhi salam. And truly, when we look at the life of Sulaymān alayhi salam, we see that he was a man that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed him with kingdom, with riches, with authority. But in his eyes and the way that he lived his life, the riches and the kingdom and all of the sovereignty that he had, this was less valuable in his eyes than the hidayah, the guidance, the worship of Allah, the good things as far as his internal spirituality was concerned. So as we've been mentioning, brothers and sisters, that the money can be in your pocket. No problem. It could be right here in your shirt. But if the love of this wealth pierces through your shirt and it enters your heart, that is where it's a problem. Sulaymān alayhi salam, Dawood alayhi salam, all of these great anbiya. Yes, some of them were kings. But if the wealth was taken away from them, they would not be saddened, because this was not the purpose of their life. This is not what they lived for. And subhanAllah, when we see the way that these people lived, we will see time and again, the wealth was below their feet. It was never inside of their hearts. Brothers and sisters, we have covered Sulaymān alayhi salam, part of the kingdom that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala gave him. Firstly, he had his army. وَحُشِرَ لِسُلَيْمَانَ جُنُودُهُ مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ وَالطَّيْرِ فَهُمْ يُوزَعُونَ. Jinnat, human beings, animals, birds, all of these, they were in ranks for Sulaymān alayhi salam. They were all properly organized, and wherever he would issue a command, all of these different creatures, they would stand up and they would say, Labbaik, O Sulaymān alayhi salam, order us. He had jinnat that would dive into the sea. They would get pearls. They had jinnat that would build. وَجِفَانٍ كَالْجَوَابِ, huge, وَتَمَاثِيل. There would be huge pots that they would carve out. Huge statues that they would carve. Big bowls. All of these different things, they were building, they were making under the supervision of Sulaymān alayhi salam. But amazingly enough, out of all of this, I mentioned it last week as well, they mentioned that the bowls that he would construct under his command, they were so huge that a small village could dwell inside of those bowls. That's how huge these pots would be, right? Built within the mountainside. You couldn't move it. You couldn't take it anywhere else. It was so huge. Thousands of people, they would eat from these huge bowls. This was the type of kingdom that he was blessed with. And we're going to learn a little bit more about some of the wealth that Sulaymān alayhi salam possessed. However, brothers and sisters, keep in mind, Sulaymān alayhi salam, despite having all of this at his disposal, he had all of this at his disposal. How much was he taking for his personal use from the state treasury? $0, 0 cents, 0 dirham, 0 dinar. He would not take anything for his own pocket. For his personal expenses, what would Sulaymān alayhi salam do? He would sell baskets. He would weave. He would make these little baskets and he would sell them. This was for his own personal use. If he wanted, he could have told, hey, jinn, build me, mashallah. You see Baytul Maqdis? You see the Masjid of Al-Aqsa of Jerusalem? See how big it is? Make me a masjid like that. Make my house like that. Allahu Akbar. For his own personal, he didn't have much concern and care. But when it came to the house of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, for Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, it's mentioned. What did he do? He ordered the jinnat, go far and wide. Bring the best rock. Bring the best material from around the world, and you bring it back to Jerusalem. This is what we're going to use to make Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, to make the Masjid of Jerusalem. Brothers and sisters, you see, the mindset of Sulaymān alayhi salam, for myself, it's okay, I can make sabr. I don't need the best things of this world. For my own personal life, I don't always have to be top notch. But when it's for Allah, it's going to be the best. When it's for the sake of Allah, when it's for the sake of Islam, I'm going to give my best. Allahu Akbar, brothers and sisters, we hear this time and again, right? When it's time for prayer, you're busy doing something, Alhamdulillah, at least the thought of the prayer comes. That's a good thing, right? But if we take it to the next level, we take it to the next step, let's stop saying, well, let me get this prayer out of the way, then we'll get to work. Let me get this prayer out of the way, and then we'll start on X, Y, Z. Right? Look at the words that we use. Let's get the prayer out of the way. Salah is not something to get out of the way. Everything else gets out of the way for the sake of our salah, for the sake of our prayers. Right? Our prayer, this is our life, should revolve around this. This is the pinnacle. This is where everything else revolves around the salah. But what do we do sometimes? May Allah forgive us. Quickly, let me get the prayer out of the way. Dinner's ready soon. Right? Quickly, let me finish my prayer. I have to get to my homework. So quickly we'll do our salah fast. Okay, now focus on the food, on the studies, on the this, on the that, whatever else is there. Right? But a true believer, the mindset is different. It's opposite. It's time for prayer. I'm going to block everything else out at this moment. I'm not going to think about my food. I'm not going to think about my project. I'm not going to think about all the million things that are out there. Right now I'm blocking it all out because I'm focused on my salah. Allahu Akbar. And this is why they say when a person performs salah, there's a wisdom in how we say Allahu Akbar and we raise our hands. When you're raising your hands, essentially what are you saying? You're saying dunya and work and all of these things that are coming in my mind, I'm throwing you behind me. You don't matter. I'm throwing you behind right now. Allahu Akbar. And the only thing which is coming inside is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Sulaymān alayhi salam, a king, a prophet, a Nabi of Allah, all of the riches were at his fingertips, but still this did not deter him from his actual objective in this life, which was to preach the message of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala and to be a true servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is mentioned in the Quran Kareem, one of the incidents in the life of Sulaymān alayhi salam. As we know, he was a king, he was a military commander, he made sure that his army had the best horses, they had the best soldiers, everything was top of the line for Sulaymān alayhi salam's army. So one day, they brought a huge flock of these horses, which were used in the training for the army. And these horses, extremely agile, extremely beautiful, extremely pleasing to the eyes. So when they brought these horses in front of Sulaymān alayhi salam, Sulaymān alayhi salam, he was petting these horses, he was admiring how beautiful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made these horses. And while he was petting these horses, looking at them, subhanallah, wow, these horses are so amazing. He's going to the front of the line of the horses, going back to the middle, going from behind, he's inspecting them, checking them all out. In the meantime, he did not realize, but the salah was running late. The time for prayer was running late, and he was busy looking and inspecting these horses. So when this happened, Sulaymān alayhi salam, when he realized, Ya Allah, I'm looking at these horses, I'm busy, inspecting the horses, and there I see the sun is coming down. It's almost time that salah is running out. I better go and perform my salah. He goes and he performs his salah. And when he comes back, رُدُّوهَا عَلَيْهِ, bring those horses back to me. فَطَفِقَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّوقِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ. What did Sulaymān alayhi salam do? He slaughtered all of these horses. He slaughtered them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Now keep in mind, a person might think that, wait a minute, isn't this wasting? Right? Because he slaughtered these horses, they've gone to waste, nobody's going to be able to benefit from them. So from a fiqhi perspective, Islamic jurisprudence perspective, right? In our Sharia, there's actually a difference of opinion regarding horse meat. Is horse meat permissible to eat or no? So there's actually a difference of opinion on it. Many fuqaha, they actually said it is permissible to eat. But keep in mind, Sulaymān alayhi salam, they followed a different Sharia. They did not follow the Quran and the Sharia of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They had their own Sharia. So the meat of these horses was not gone to waste. It was used to feed the poor people and to help them out. But the point and the moral of this story that we learned from Sulaymān alayhi salam is that despite the fact that these were top of the line horses, right? They were bred, they were trained, they were very, very agile, premium quality horses. And he was so amazed by them, but it made him delay the salah. So Sulaymān alayhi salam, what did he do to show his ghayrah, to show his discipline, and to show and manifest that, Ya Allah, I love you more than I love these horses. I love you more than I love these horses. Nothing will take me away from your love. He slaughtered the horses to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and manifest his love. That, oh Allah, these horses don't mean anything to me. You mean everything to me. And he slaughtered them, brothers and sisters. From this we learn something important. Number one, we learned that Sulaymān alayhi salam, his attitude and his mentality with Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala was such that if something takes me away from you, if something becomes an obstacle and an impediment between me and you, Ya Allah, I am willing to sacrifice that for your sake. I'm willing to give it up. I'm willing to make my own heart bleed through the pain of sacrifice, the pain of separation. I will give it up for your sake. They mention, for example, in the morning time when the sun is first coming up, we will see that a lot of times the horizon is red. Has anyone seen that before? Early after Fajr, Ishraq time. Inshallah, you guys are not falling asleep right away after Fajr. You're reading your Quran and doing your du'as. And then you see on the horizon, right, as the sun is coming up, it's red. And shortly thereafter, what happens? The sun rises. Nice and bright, it's shining, provides light and energy, and its rays brighten up the whole world. The ulama mention the same way like how before the sun rises, you see that redness in the horizon. They say this is like the redness in the nafs of a human being. If you can slaughter your evil desires, if you can get rid of your evil desires and say no, and put your foot down, and say, Ya Allah, you are my Lord, these desires are not my Lord. Ya Allah, your hukum, your command, that is what I'm obliged to follow. Not the command of my lower desires that are constantly urging me and telling me to do this and telling me to do that. Once you slaughter it, once you slaughter it, what happens? You'll see that redness. You'll feel that pain. You'll feel the pain of separation from that sin. It'll hurt you. It'll annoy you. It'll grieve you. You'll feel tempted. Man, I want to do it. I feel like going towards that. But if you remain strong and you slaughter that evil desire, the redness of that blood will appear within your heart. But soon after, guess what happens? Just like you see the redness before the sun rises, you see the redness on that horizon, then the sun comes up and it shines and it's bright and you can see. And once the sun comes up, it's like life is bustling again. People come outside, animals come outside, the birds start chirping. Life actually starts when the sun comes up. So what happens when you slaughter and sacrifice the evil desires of the soul? The internal sun begins to rise. And now you can actually see, you can actually live the way that a Muslim is supposed to live. Now you can actually appreciate the beauty of salah, of dua, of Quran. You can actually feel the sweetness inside of Islam and being obedient to Allah Ta'ala. You see, insan goes through different stages. The first stage is when you're battling yourself. You're battling against your desires. This is the nafsul ammara. It's always telling you to do evil. The soul is constantly tempting you. Then you get to the next stage, nafsul lawama, where you start to blame yourself. You say, nafs, oh evil desires, don't tell me to do this. I'm a Muslim. I'm a servant of Allah. I'm not the servant of my desires. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to listen to Allah. You're fighting with yourself. You're battling yourself. You're struggling. You feel that battle. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose. But if you persevere and you continue and you win the battle continuously, then what happens? You reach the third state, which is called an-nafsul mutma'inna. The content soul, the content nafs, where you experience tranquility. You experience true contentment and true comfort. Nothing makes you more happier than 2 rakats of salah. Nothing you look forward to more than opening the Quran-i-Kareem. Nothing you look forward to more than sitting in solitude and remembering Allah and raising your hands in dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us this beautiful condition. So we see from Sulaymān alayhi salam, when the horses distracted him from Allah, what did he do? Immediately he slaughtered them and he gave them all in charity. We see in the life of the Prophet alayhi salam similar incidents that took place where the Prophet alayhi salam, anything that would distract him from his duty and his mission and his objective, the mission in this world on earth, anything that would distract him, he would immediately get rid of it so that he can stay focused. So it's mentioned on one occasion that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was given a shawl as a gift. And this shawl in particular, it was very fancy and it had designs. It had, so many different patterns. So the Prophet alayhi salam, he performed salah. And as he was performing salah, his eyes fell upon this shawl. And he was looking at the shawl. And when the salah was over, the Prophet ﷺ, he instructed one of his companions, take this shawl, give it to so-and-so. But the Prophet ﷺ, he gave it away. He did not keep it for himself. They said, why, O Rasulullah? Why are you giving this shawl away? It was given to you as a gift. Rasulullah ﷺ said, this shawl, it has distracted me inside of my salah. I cannot keep the thing which will distract me from Allah Ta'ala. He gave it away. Right? Subhanallah. And following in his footsteps, we see Abu Talha al-Ansari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He was a famous companion and he was very famous for his garden, Biruha. It was a famous garden in Medina Munawwara. Everybody knew his garden. MashaAllah, so many date palm trees, so many flowers, so many, very lush and an amazing place, and it had the sweetest water. So people used to come specifically to this garden and they would drink from its water, the water of the Biruha. So Abu Talha Ansari radiyallahu anhu, one time he's performing his salah inside of this garden, and as he's praying, as he's performing his salah, what does he see? There's a bird flying around. Goes on one branch, goes to the next. Goes in this direction, goes to the next direction. And Abu Talha is performing his salah. He's kind of smiling to himself. That, man, look at my garden. It's so dense. My garden is so thick. It's got so much of vegetation that this bird cannot even make its way through. Right? Because he's going from one branch to the next branch, and the thicket of this garden, the vegetation is so dense that this bird cannot even find a hole to pass through. He keeps going from one place to another. So Abu Talha Ansari radiallahu an, in the middle of his salah, he's taken away with the journey of this bird, and he's thinking about his garden, and then he snaps back into it. He snaps out of it, finishes his salah. He comes directly to the Prophet alayhi salam, and what does he say? Ya Rasulullah, the garden of Biruha, the famous garden that all the residents of Medina Munawwara, they're crazy about this garden. They've traveled from far and wide to drink from its water. They know how famous Biruha is. Right? You can imagine, he's kind of got some type of standing in society, some type of fame in society, because he's attached to this garden. But he comes to the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I have given this garden to Allah and His Messenger ﷺ. Give it how you deem fit, O Rasulullah. Allahu Akbar. The Prophet ﷺ instructed him, distribute it amongst your near and dear. Distribute it amongst your relatives. So we can see the same spirit which was inside of Sulaymān alayhi salam. The Prophet alayhi salam displayed the same spirit. The companions that were following the Prophet alayhi salam, they also showed the same spirit. If this garden is, being an obstacle between me and Allah, I don't want this garden anymore. Ya Allah, this garden is for you, and it's for the messenger. He will distribute it amongst the believers. He completely gave it up. There was another great companion by the name of Wahshi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And many of us probably know of Wahshi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He was initially a slave. And he was a person who was a very excellent marksman in warfare. So in particular, he would throw the spear. And they would say, whatever target you put for him, whether it's a still target or whether it's a moving target, Wahshi radiyallahu an was so precise and he was so accurate and such an expert, he would always throw the spear right on the target. So during the battle of Uhud, the disbelievers of the Quraysh, they had this man Wahshi. This is before he became a Muslim. This is before he had entered into the fold of Islam. He was with the Quraysh, with the disbelievers, and they told him, your objective, your goal in this battle is to get Hamza radiyallahu ta'ala. Right? The uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was a very, very beloved person to the Prophet alayhi salam, very, very close to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he was such a man that in battle, all of the disbelievers, they feared Hamza radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, because he was Asadullahi wa Asadu Rasuli, as the Prophet alayhi salam said. He was the lion of Allah and the lion of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now, in the middle of this battle, you have Wahshi, who's given this task that pretty much, in order for him to be set free, right, in exchange for his emancipation and his freedom, he's got to take Hamza radiyallahu anhu. He's got to assassinate him. And if he does so, he will be promised freedom, he will be unshackled, and he will no longer have to live as a slave. So they gave him these conditions, and in the midst of the battle, what did he do? He struck Hamza radiyallahu ta'ala an, and he became the means of the shahada of Hamza radiyallahu ta'ala an. It's mentioned in the books of Seerah, the time that the Prophet alayhi salam cried the most in his entire life. He was never seen crying more than the day that Hamza radiyallahu ta'ala an became shaheed. This caused the most tears to the Prophet alayhi salam. Brothers and sisters, many, many years later, who comes knocking on the door? It is Wahshi. He comes to the Prophet ﷺ, and I'm making the story short. He says that he wants to accept Islam. He says that he wants to become a Muslim. Brothers and sisters, after all the pain that Wahshi caused to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he still opened his doors, he opened his arms, and he welcomed Wahshi to enter the fold of Islam. And Allahu Akbar, Wahshi eventually, he became a Muslim. Eventually the time came where the battle of Yamama would take place, and a person rose by the name of Musaylamatul Kadhab. Musaylamatul Kadhab, he was a man by the name of Musaylama, and he said, after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'm the next prophet. Everybody follow me. I'm the new prophet. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, he's gone. I'm the one who's now taking his place. All of you people should follow me. Right? And he's claiming to be a Muslim. He's claiming that he's the next prophet. This became a big fitna in the Muslim ummah. So, lo and behold, one of the people who stood up was Wahshi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And look at what he said, and look at what his intention was. He said, in my days of ignorance, and in my days of disbelief as a non-Muslim, I assassinated one of the people who was closest to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I took him away from this dunya, and I committed a very serious crime by taking him off the face of the earth. So he said, today I will make up for this crime of mine by removing from the earth someone who is from the most hated to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Musaylamatul Kadhab. Tilka bitilka, this for that. And he went and he traveled with the army, and he was successful in fulfilling this mission. Allahu Akbar. Brothers and sisters, this is a concept that we need to learn. This is a concept that we must understand. Whatever is an obstacle between us and Allah, get rid of those obstacles. Remove them from our lives. And whatever evil a person has done, make amends for that by doing equally, at least, if not more, doing goodness in that avenue. For example, brothers and sisters, a person who lived a life of stealing, a person who lived a life of cheating, a person who lived a life of taking the rights of other people. How many people we have saw in the history of Islam, after living that lifestyle, what did they do? They compensated for it by living a life of charity, by living a life of giving, more so than what they had done in their days of ignorance. Fudayl bin Iyad, rahimahullah ta'ala, he was an example of this. Right? He lived as a robber, as a highway robber. He would steal from the caravans. And subhanallah, when he became a good Muslim and he made tawbah and he repented to Allah, he said, the days were there where Allah's servants were afraid to walk on the streets. They were afraid to go on a journey because my caravans would stop them and rob them and loot them. He said, for the rest of my life, what will happen? The servants of Allah, they will find peace through me. They will find ease through me. I will make their khidmah, I will serve them. Right? Ibrahim ibn Adham, rahimahullah, he was a person who lived as a prince, he lived as a king. Lavish, luxury, everything that he wanted, it was at his fingertips. So one day what happened? A person climbed on his roof, he was hearing footsteps, and he's in his mansion, all of his luxuries, gold, silver, everything. He calls from below, he says, who's there? He says, who's there? He says, some random person is here. He says, what are you doing? He says, I'm looking for my camel. You're looking for your camel? On top of my roof, you're looking for your camel? Does this make any sense? Right? First of all, if it's your camel, what is it doing on my property? Right? Second of all, it's a camel, for God's sake. Where's the camel going to be? Walking on the floor. How's it going to make it up to the roof? Crawling on top of the roof. And that person replied to Ibrahim ibn Adham, rahimahullah. He said, "O Ibrahim, and you are a person, you claim to look for Allah inside of this luxury and inside of this palace? You're a person, you claim to want Allah. Are you looking for it inside of all of these riches?" Right? So the person gave him an analogy. Just like my camel you wouldn't expect me to find my camel walking on top of your roof. Don't expect that you're going to find Allah when you're completely engrossed and immersed in the love for your luxuries and wealth. And it was from that moment, what did Ibrahim bin Adham do? He left his palace. He left his riches. He went into the wilderness. He devoted himself for Allah wa ta'ala. Now, brothers and sisters, we're not saying that you need to do that. But the bare minimum that we can do today, the things that are distracting us from Allah, the things that are distracting us from our true purpose in this world, remove those obstacles out of our lives. Be true and sincere about wanting that change. Allahu Akbar. I know people personally. I know people that this phone was distracting them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They could not control their eyes when it came to this phone. They could not hold themselves back when it comes to this phone. And today, they're using a flip phone. They're using the old Nokia. No problem. They gave up what was distracting them and becoming an obstacle between themselves and Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. This is the iman that we need to have. This is that fervor that we need to have. Within our hearts, there needs to be this zeal and this willingness that, Ya Allah, I truly want you. I'm willing to cut and separate from whatever it is that's blocking me from you. Right? People, using the laptop, for example. Right? If a person knows, if I'm going to be alone with the laptop, I'm not going to be able to control myself. I'm not going to be able to protect myself. It happens. Person is weak. Shaitan is within our veins. If a person finds themselves in this position, do not use the laptop when you're in privacy. Do not take the laptop into your room. Who's going to monitor you? Who's going to tell you? Nobody's going to tell you. Monitor yourself. Who told Sulaymān alayhi salam to slaughter the horses? He did it himself because he wanted it. He wanted to show Allah where his heart is. If we want to show Allah where our hearts are, we must make these changes from our own initiative. We don't need anybody to tell us what to do. Use the laptop in a public place. Use it in the living room. And whatever else it is, brothers and sisters, that could be causing us to be far from Allah, to be obstacles between ourselves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we must make it a point to remove those things from our lives. May Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala grant us all tawfiq. Brothers and sisters, moving along, Sulaymān alayhi salam, he had this great ability that he was able to conversate with the animals, with the ants, with the birds, with all these different creatures. And subhanallah, it is mentioned that one time there was a drought, and Sulaymān alayhi salam, he exited with all of the Muslims, and as they're exiting to the open field so that they can pray, Sulaymān alayhi salam hears there's a tiny little ant. And subhanallah, this little ant, it was making dua and it was calling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was saying, Ya Allah, your servants are distressed. Ya Allah, your servants are thirsty. Ya Allah, your creation needs you. And this tiny little ant, it is praying, it is making dua. And such beautiful words are coming from this little ant. When Sulaymān alayhi salam stopped his armies, and he's listening and hearing this ant, he said, "Oh my army, go back home." He said, "Why? We came out for making dua for rain because there's a drought. There's nothing, the crops need to grow. We came here for the purpose of dua. Why are you stopping us and telling us to go back?" He said, "The reason I'm telling you is because there was a certain servant of Allah, a certain creation of Allah. He's already made such a dua that he has sufficed us all." And Allahu Akbar, the rain came down from the dua of this little ant. Right? So such was the communication that Sulaymān alayhi salam had. It's also mentioned in the Quran Kareem. One of these ants, قالت نملة يا أيها النمل ادخلوا مساكنكم. One of these little ants, he said, enter your dwellings. He's telling all the other ants, right? Go inside of your homes. لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده وهم لا يشعرون. It should not be such that Sulaymān alayhi salam and his armies, they might crush you while they don't know that you people are here. They're not going to see you, little ants on the pathway. So go back inside of your homes. The army of Sulaymān alayhi salam is coming. Allahu Akbar. The ants were discussing to themselves. And look at Sulaymān alayhi salam. When this happened, what did he say? فَتَبَسَّمَ ضَاحِكًا مِّن قَوْلِهَا. He smiled, laughing at the statement of this ant. And right away, what did he say? أو ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي. He said, Oh Allah, allow me, and I'm going to just paraphrase to make it short. He basically said, Oh Allah, allow me to be grateful to you for your bounties. Allow me to truly thank you for the bounties that you have bestowed upon me and my family. Allahu Akbar. This was Sulaymān alayhi salam. Despite these amazing things happening, he never attributed to himself. You know, oh armies, I can talk to the ants, I know what they said. You know, never did he do this. He always humble, his head is down. All the bounties and blessings that come, it brings him lower and lower and more grateful to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. If a bounty and a blessing makes your head go high and it makes your nose go up in the air, that bounty and blessing is actually a calamity. Because it's making you arrogant. It's making you look down on other human beings. Allahu Akbar. They say a tree, the more fruits that it has, the more fruits that's on a tree, what happens to the tree? The branches bow down. The branches, because of the weight of the fruits, the branches go down. The more knowledge a person has, the more taqwa a person has, they become lower to the ground. They become more humble to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. The branches that don't have any fruits, what happens to them? They don't bow, they're sticking straight up. Their head is in the air. Right? So we shouldn't be like those branches. Sulaymān alayhi salam was exactly opposite of that. Respected listeners, we all know in the life of Sulaymān alayhi salam, there's the famous story between him and the people of Saba. Saba was a nation that lived in the area surrounding Yemen. And subhanAllah, this entire story, it's very clearly mentioned, all of the details in Surah An-Naml. So very briefly, I will paraphrase what exactly happened with that story. Sulaymān alayhi salam, within his armies, he had a special bird called the hudhud. And this hudhud bird, it used to seek out water. It used to find out where there's going to be water so they could dig up and extract water. Various different tasks. Hudhud would also send messages. So one day, Sulaymān alayhi salam, he's addressing his army, and he notices Hudhud is not there. Hudhud is missing. He can't see Hudhud. So he says to the people, مَا لِيَ لَا أَرَى الْهُدْهُدْ أَمْ كَانَ مِنَ الْغَائِبِينَ. He basically issues a warning, and he says, what is wrong with me that I cannot see Hudhud? Here's a point of reflection. This is a leader. This is a general. Right? He's leading this whole army. But look at the words that he uses. What is it with me that I cannot see Hudhud? Do we see the words that Sulaymān alayhi salam used? He could have easily said what? Why is Hudhud not here? I'm going to punish him. I'm going to take care of him. Why is Hudhud missing? But what did Sulaymān alayhi salam say? What is the matter with me that I do not see Hudhud present here? Allahu Akbar. Right? It's a matter, don't deal with things with haste. Don't be hasty in your judgment. Don't be quick to condemn people if you don't know the realities of the situation. Right? Sometimes what happens? A person gets mad at someone. Right? then when you actually do your research and you find out the person's not even at fault. They didn't even do anything wrong. And you're already rebuking them. You're already speaking ill of them. Right? They mentioned, like for example, one time they said there was a person in the masjid. One of them, they were sitting down with the Quran. Okay, so they're sitting like this with the Quran. And the youngster next to him, he's sitting with his phone like this. So what happened? The elder came inside the masjid. He said, MashaAllah, this guy's reading Quran. He kissed him on his head. And said, this guy is sitting here on his phone inside of the masjid. He smacked him on his head. Right? And then he looked closer, and what does he see? The guy that was looking like he's reading Quran, he had his phone like this. And the poor kid that got smacked on his head, he looks at the phone, and what does he see? He's reading Quran on his phone. Right? So we shouldn't be hasty. We shouldn't be quick. Understand first what's happening, right? Especially with the youngsters, with the children, right? We're very quick to condemn them. We're very quick to first see what's going on. See what's happening. What's the situation? Right? Why is something bothering you? Why is something troubling you? Is there a reason why you're behaving this way? Can I help you with something? Allahu Akbar. So Sulaymān alayhi salam, he showed exemplary leadership. He didn't quickly in haste say, I'm going to chop off Hudhud's head. The moment Hudhud comes, I'm going to chop him up into pieces. We're going to make him into kebab for the army. That's not what he said. Firstly, he said, what's wrong with me that I don't see Hudhud here? Is he missing? Did something go wrong? Is he on some kind of mission somewhere? Hudhud came back and he gave his excuse. And Sulaymān alayhi salam accepted his excuse. What did he say? He said, Oh Sulaymān alayhi salam, I came across such a nation. There's a woman who's governing them. She's been granted many things from this dunya. She's very, very wealthy and rich. She's a queen. وَلَهَا عَرْشٌ عَظِيمٌ. She's got this huge throne. Right? Now Sulaymān alayhi salam, he's got his throne. He's got his kingdom. Who is this woman that she's got a kingdom when Sulaymān alayhi salam is the ruler of the world at that time? وَجَدْتُهَا وَقَوْمَهَا. He says, I saw her and her people. They actually are worshipping the sun. They don't worship Allah, they worship the sun. So eventually, what happens? Sulaymān alayhi salam, he sends a letter with the Hudhud. And subhanallah, the letter was not long. The letter was not a huge, 4, 5, 6 page essay and draft. What did the letter say? إِنَّهُ مِن سُلَيْمَانَ وَإِنَّهُ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. The letter is from Sulaymān. The letter is in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. أَلَّا تَعْلُوا عَلَيَّ وَأْتُونِي مُسْلِمِينَ. Do not try and overpower me. Come to me submissive as Muslims. That's it. Period. When this queen read the letter, she knew right away, we're dealing with something serious here. We're dealing with a serious threat. Because nobody sends a letter like this with such powerful words and straight to the point. So what did she do? She consulted her people, and eventually they came to this agreement, and I'm just paraphrasing so that we don't take too much time here. They basically said, we're going to start off, we're going to send them some gifts. We're going to send some gold, some silver, send them some gifts, feel them out a little bit and see what type of people what they are. When we get there, we can see, maybe if they have an army, we can see how much power we're dealing with. If maybe there's a war, we're going to, scout them out and see, are we powerful enough to deal with these people? And it just might be such that if we give them some wealth, give them some gifts, then this king might say, okay, you're giving me money and wealth, I will let you live and be free and you don't have to worry about anything, right? You can continue with your sun worship and we will not call you towards anything. Maybe they'll just leave us alone if we give them money. So what did they do? These people, they went off to send these gifts, and it was a few bricks of gold and precious stones. As they're coming, Allah informed Sulaymān alayhi salam that these people, the queen of Saba, they're bringing you some gifts to try and entice you so that you don't talk to them and invite them towards Islam. You'll just let them be so they can keep sending these gifts. They're bringing you gold and silver and precious stones. So what did Sulaymān alayhi salam do? And remember, he's a king and he's very, very wealthy. So before his, you can say like the palace of government affairs where he would rule from, 30 miles out, he made sure that the entire road is laden with gold and silver bricks. So for 30 miles, before you reach Sulaymān alayhi salam's palace, the whole road is made of gold and silver. So he said, 30 miles, go and construct this. And he made sure in the palace itself, 4,000 gold chairs were on the right side of his gathering, and 4,000 gold chairs on the left side of the royal court. He made sure it was decorated, it was made very, very presentable. But remember, Sulaymān alayhi salam didn't do this as a show-off. He didn't do this to flaunt or to be arrogant. Sulaymān alayhi salam did this to show the queen of Saba. You coming with a few gold bricks? You see 30 miles of my bricks? You see 8,000 gold chairs? You think I'm going to be flattered by your few bricks that you brought me here? Right? Take your bricks and go back home. I want La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Let's talk about your sun worship. That's what I'm interested in. I don't need your money. I don't need your money. I want you to worship the one Allah who's the creator of the heavens and the earth. So now you have her ministers. They came with the gold, and they're walking 30 miles. They're seeing gold and silver. They enter the royal palace, and what do they see? They see all these golden chairs and everything, and they're like, oh, our queen wanted to give you this, they're kind of shy, like, here's the gold. And Sulaymān alayhi salam, he tells them, we are people, we live for Allah. We don't live for riches and for gold and silver. Take your silver and bricks and all of these precious stones, take it back to your queen, and let her know what you saw here and what you experienced. Right? So, they go back and they inform their queen what exactly is going on, what we're dealing with here. This is a very noble man. He's got 30 miles of decked out gold and silver, and his palace was like this, but all of that means nothing to him. He doesn't care about this wealth. He cares about La ilaha illallah. And they informed everything, and finally what happened? She understood and she knew there's only one way. We have to come submissive to this Sulaymān alayhi salam, to this leader, and we need to see what's happening and submit ourselves before him, because there's no way that we're going to be able to battle against these people. So they start the journey, and they're coming towards Sulaymān alayhi salam. In the meantime, again, Sulaymān alayhi salam, he's informed by Allah that they're coming. So he made a plan. He said, I want this woman to further see the money and the wealth and the riches that she has, and she's immersed in, and she's living her life for these riches. I want her to understand and see these riches mean nothing, and the kingdom of Sulaymān alayhi salam is far superior than the kingdom which she enjoys. But look at Sulaymān alayhi salam as a model. This kingdom does not matter to us as much as the obedience of Allah matters. So what did he do? He instructed the people, as she's on her way, one of you will bring her magnificent throne. You will bring it here to Sulaymān alayhi salam. So when she comes, she'll say, oh my God, these people already have my throne. Right? So I'm condensing the story. Sulaymān alayhi salam, he first asked, who will do this job? So one of the jinnat, one of his jinns, Ifrit, he said, I'll have the throne here before you can get up and leave this gathering. And then another person jumped up and he said, oh Sulaymān alayhi salam, I will have the throne here before your eyes can blink. It was a man of Allah. And as a miracle, what happened? Lo and behold, in the blink of an eye, the throne was already there. And again, you see time and again, what was the habit of Sulaymān alayhi salam? When this happened, right away, what did he say? Rabbi awzi'ni an ashkur. Oh Allah, allow me to be grateful for you. Allow me to thank you. Allow me to be grateful for all of these bounties that you are giving upon us. So eventually she comes to Sulaymān alayhi salam. She sees that her throne is there. This was approximately 1,500 miles away. And subhanallah, she came and she sees the throne is there. And there was also a glass palace that Sulaymān alayhi salam had set up. He was testing her. He was showing her, you think you're so intelligent, you think you're so smart and wealthy, and you got all the luxury, right? The real smartness is here in my kingdom, because we worship and we obey Allah. So he set up this glass palace, and he made it in such a way that the floor was water, but on top of the water there was like glass planks. So it looks like to reach inside you have to walk on top of the water. So as the queen of Saba, she came to this palace, she sees that there's water, so she kind of rolls her pants up as she's getting ready to walk through the water to reach the entrance. But the moment she takes a step, what happens? She's not going to get wet because there's glass on top of there, right? So like this, Sulaymān alayhi salam showed her that her knowledge is deficient, and the knowledge of prophethood, this is the true complete knowledge. And when this happened and she noticed this, the first thing she said right away, Aslamtu ma'a Sulaymān lillahi rabbil alameen. She said, I submit, I become a Muslim, I submit myself to Allah, the Lord of the universes. I submit to Him together with Sulaymān alayhi salam. Allahu Akbar. So she becomes a Muslimah, she accepts Islam. There's a difference of opinion on whether or not they married or not. Some say they eventually got married, some say they did not get married. Wallahu a'lam. There's no authentic narrations to mention that. In the experience of Sulaymān alayhi salam, as he was teaching and leading over the Bani Israel, there was an interesting thing that happened where magic started to become very, very prominent. Magic. And this is a very, very long topic. I discussed it before in the Signs of the Day of Judgment, how it correlates to today's day and age. Inshallah, it's a little bit off topic. I think we'll save that for another time. But just to understand a little bit about it, the people in the time of Sulaymān alayhi salam, they had this assumption that jinns know the unseen. The jinnat, they have knowledge of the unseen and they know what's happening in the ghaib. This was their assumption. And in this time, the jinnat, together with the shayateen, they started this practice of magic and sorcery and witchcraft. And Allahu Akbar, the Bani Israel, instead of utilizing the right platforms, instead of utilizing the right way to get things done, they would go to these shayateen. They would go to these jinnat. And they would literally have pamphlets and documents and things which they would write down with like equations for their sorcery. And in the meantime, it's mentioned that Allah Azza wa Jal, He sent down 2 angels to the city of Babylon in Iraq. And what did these 2 angels do? They taught the people a special type of knowledge, the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, special du'as, special wordings that bring in barakah and blessings. This was such a science and such a knowledge that if you misinterpret it, and if you mix it with falsehood, and you mix it with the filth that these jinnat and shayateen are teaching, then what would happen as a result of that? It would result in magic. These 2 angels, they would tell the people, فَلَا تَكْفُرْ. Do not disbelieve. Do not take advantage of this knowledge which is being taught. Because if you take it and utilize it the wrong way, mixing it with all of the filth of disbelief, then what will happen? You could easily fall into the fold of disbelief. But what did the Bani Israel do? And what did the people do? They learned from these 2 angels. They mixed those teachings with the filth from the shayateen and the jinnat, and eventually they ended up full-blown into sorcery, witchcraft and magic. فَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. They learned how to separate between husband and wife. They learned these little equations. You write it down, you do evil with it, you mix it with, worshipping of the shaitan, worshipping of the jinnat. You mix these little equations together, and what happens? You're separating between husband and wife. مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. And people started to continue learning this type of knowledge, practicing this type of knowledge. And Sulaymān alayhi salam, what did he do? He took all of these pamphlets, he took all of these documents, he took all of this sorcery and witchcraft, and what did he do? He buried it deep below the Masjid of Sulaymān alayhi salam. In Jerusalem, he buried it. And respected listeners, historically, if you look at a lot of the crusades that started, a lot of historians believe the purpose of the crusades was not just the spread of Christianity. A prime goal of the crusades was to retrieve those pamphlets and the knowledge of that witchcraft and sorcery, because inside of it, all of these things, the jinnat were building all these huge towers, huge structures, huge bowls, all of these amazing things they were doing. So people wanted access to that knowledge. We want the kingdom of Sulaymān alayhi salam. We want these jinns to work for us. We want these jinns to be making all of these amazing creations for our purpose and for our pockets. And subhanallah, a lot of ulama and historians believe that today, the advancements in technology that we see, airplanes, electricity, the Eiffel Tower, the Burj, all of these amazing things, how does this suddenly just erupt? Where this low insan suddenly just thought for himself, okay, let's make electricity, let's make light, let's make these huge things. How did they suddenly get this knowledge and this information? A lot of historians believe it's actually linked with those pamphlets that were buried under the temple of Sulaymān alayhi salam. There's a lot of other things, we cannot say for sure if it's true or if it's a theory, wallahu a'lam, but a lot of people do believe that, the Knights Templar Knights, all of these people, Freemasonry, a lot of these things, their asl roots goes back to those scrolls which were buried beneath Sulaymān alayhi salam. And subhanAllah, it's actually mentioned some of these people that Sulaymān alayhi salam would work with. They would work under Sulaymān alayhi salam. One of them, his name was Asif. And it is believed that at a certain time, this man named Asif, one of the jinnat, took over his body, possessed him, and began teaching these scrolls and these not scriptures, but these scrolls and pamphlets of magic. He started teaching them, and the people saw, oh, it's Asif. This is a respected and very trusted person of Sulaymān alayhi salam. So they started learning it from him. And subhanallah, they mentioned a lot of these modern day shaitani cults and movements, if you look into their works, they name as their supreme leader Hiram Asif. Asif is mentioned in there. Wallahu a'lam. Is it the same Asif? Is this something that's actually true? Is there a true link? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, but there is no doubt that this is what the people were involved in, especially in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's mentioned in the Quran that when the book came to them and when the Rasul came to them, نَبَذَ فَرِيقٌ مِّنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابِ. These people from the Ahlul Kitab, they threw the book of Allah behind their backs. They didn't want the Quran. كَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. As if they didn't know this is the next scripture from Allah. They didn't want to read it. What did they want to read instead? وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ. This is mentioned in the Quran. The Ahlul Kitab, the Jews of Medina Munawwara, they did not want the Quran even though they knew that it's true. What did they want instead? They wanted that which the shayateen would read in the reign of Sulaymān alayhi salam. Where did all the power come from? Where did all the money come from? Where did the whole world not be able to speak out against you come from? Many people believe this is where the link was, from this type of witchcraft and sorcery and magic. Wallahu a'lam. Eventually, brothers and sisters, Sulaymān alayhi salam, he taught with great wisdom. And I'm just going to mention one case that he mentioned. There were two women. They came with a child. One of them said, "This is my baby." The other one said, "No, this is my baby." So Dawood alayhi salam was alive at this time. So Dawood alayhi salam said, "Well, this woman has possession of the baby. The baby is in her arms. It must be hers." So he ruled in favor of the woman who had possession of the child. And then she took the child and she was leaving. Sulaymān alayhi salam, being the son, he jumped forward and he said, "Oh my father, I have another idea for this verdict that you are issuing. I have another idea for the verdict." And look at Dawood alayhi salam. Despite Sulaymān being his son, he said, "Yes, my son, let me hear what you have to say." He said, "We'll do this instead. O women, we will cut the baby in half. So half will be for you and half will be for you." How does that sound? One of the women, she stayed silent. The other woman, she said, "No way, please don't do that. I give up my right, take the child." Sulaymān alayhi salam said, "That is the mother." Allahu Akbar. You see the wisdom that he ruled with. Right? And this is very, very important, brothers and sisters, that today we want to teach a lot of things. We want children to learn a lot of things. We want to communicate with people to really understand our message and how we feel towards them. But we're missing the key ingredient, which is wisdom. Right? Dealing with wisdom, dealing with hikmah in a way that a person will truly understand what we're trying to say and it will enter their hearts. Eventually, brothers and sisters, Sulaymān alayhi salam, he reached old age, and after several years of ruling the Bani Israel and ruling over Philistine, ruling over the world with all of his armies, Sulaymān alayhi salam, eventually he passed away, and he was in a chamber which was made of glass. In this chamber made of glass, he's on his staff. He's leaning on his staff, and all of the jinnat, they're watching Sulaymān alayhi salam. So they're busy working, right? Because he's the king, he's the ruler, and they know the moment we disobey Sulaymān alayhi salam and we're not getting our work done, he'll punish us. So the jinnat are busy working, they're working, and every once in a while they're probably glancing up. Oh, he's still there, he's watching, let's continue. In the meantime, what happened? Sulaymān alayhi salam passed away. He passed away in such a manner that he was leaning on his staff. And for 1 year, his body was leaning on the staff, even though his soul was with Allah. He was passed away. And for 1 year, the jinnat kept working. The jinnat kept building, because they could see Sulaymān alayhi salam's lifeless body. And eventually, what happened? The termites started eating away at his staff. And they ate and they ate and they ate till his staff was weakened. And finally, the staff broke and Sulaymān alayhi salam, he fell down. And that's when the jinnat, they realized, Sulaymān alayhi salam's passed away a long time. Right? We've been working here. They said, if only we knew 1 year earlier, we wouldn't have had to work for 1 year. Brothers and sisters, in this, there was a great sign for the Bani Israel. Allah was showing them. You thought the jinnat know the unseen? You believed that the jinnat could see the unseen like how Allah knows the unseen? If they truly knew the unseen, why were they busy working for 1 entire year? Because they were afraid of Sulaymān alayhi salam's lifeless body. If they knew the unseen, they should have known that he passed away a year ago, and they would have stopped their working. Allahu Akbar. So this was also a sign for the Bani Israel to open their eyes. Open your eyes, wake up and realize the truth. These jinnat, these shayateen, this little magic and these little pamphlets that they have, there's absolutely nothing in this. If you want success and you want happiness, it's in the shining scriptures that come from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. The Quran Kareem, the beautiful hadith of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us all tawfiq, that He makes us steadfast, that He protects us, and that He gives us the ability to follow in the beautiful footsteps of these great Anbiya alayhimus salam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Afwan, we took a little bit extra time today, but this was an important lesson and I wanted to make sure that we're completed.